Well, approval numbers are kind of these weird things, right? What's the state of the country? That's much more important. Is the country getting better for Americans? But let's be honest, I'm a political animal, so are you. We always have our eyes on the next election, and right about now, the Democrat Party appears to have the popularity of cottage cheese that's been left out in the sun for a week. Chris Matthews and the nerds at MSNBC were talking about it. Here it was.
Chris Matthews, what do you make of these numbers for the Democrats?
Well, you could have seen them the night that Trump addressed the Congress. And you watched the Democratic Party. They seemed like they weren't there. They were sort of vacant. They weren't saying anything with their manner. They never questioned the facts, lie after lie after lie, and said nothing. I'll tell you, James Carville, who said the Democrats should stay silent, may be partially right, but where he's wrong is you have to have a fact checker. There needs to be a war room. Remember in 1992? Yeah. Remember how Bill Clinton won that election because he had a war room. He and George Stephanopoulos were down there in Little Rock, and they were checking every fact, and nobody checks the facts anymore. And the lies are getting through to the American people.
They are.
See, this is the danger we all have in life. We all get old. Look at me, bald, gray now. Remember the war room in 1992? That's 1992, Chris. Those days are long gone. Joining me now, Brianna Lyman, wonderful correspondent with The Federalist, and Elle, Purnell, editor at The Federalist. Brianna, remember the war room in 1992? Why can't we go back to those days?
Look, if they want to go back to those days, it actually might help them. Last week, they announced that they were readopting the donkey as their logo instead of that D in the circle. And I said to myself, okay, that's great. Maybe you should adopt the policies that donkey represented, because those policies of the 90s, the 1992 war room, and even the early 2000s are not the policies of the Democratic Party today, right? They've gone so far left. The Democratic Party used to be on the same page with current Republicans about strong borders, right? No illegal immigration. If you come here illegally, there's repercussions. You're going to get sent back. That was Obama. That was Clinton, right? So the party has to revert back to this 1992 war room thought ideology and the donkey thought ideology if they possibly want to win another election.
Elle, it's very obvious to anybody paying attention, which of course you are, that there's this kind of civil war going on between the Pelosi's, the Schumers, the older types, and the Jasmine Crockett's, the AOC's. It's just hard for me to see how the older types can win just based on age. Nancy Pelosi's going to be farting dust in a few years, and AOC's like 12.
Well, that's true, but I'm also not even sure that having the younger wing of the party in leadership is actually going to help the Democrats at all. We saw exactly how that played out for them last year in the 2024 presidential election. Joe Biden was the old guy. We're all pretty sure he had dementia, and they booted him from the election and replaced him with his younger woman of color vice president, Kamala Harris. We were told that she was cool, she was she was full of joy, and voters hated her. So I think the lesson there for Democrats is it doesn't matter who you have selling it. When voters hate what you're selling, you're still not going to win.
Now, that actually is a very interesting point. In fact, I'm going to play this little clip from this Molly Jong Fast, who seems like an insane person, to kind of piggyback on that. Here she was.
Look, this is a policy versus politics problem, right? Biden world, very good on policy, grew the economy, very bad on politics, right? Unable to communicate with voters. We're seeing this sort of hangover from that a little bit. And also, losers are not popular. So they lost, people are mad, Democrats are mad. There's a ton of Monday morning quarterbacking. But the reality is there's good policy here, and it's popular too. Like, think about Project 2025. Bad policy, wildly unpopular policy. So here's the problem. Democrats actually have to do politics now, and that is where we are. But I do think they have much more popular policy. These things that Trump wants to do are very unpopular. The tariffs are unpopular. All of this is unpopular. So if they can't make this, if they can't message on this, I don't know what to tell them.
Brianna, did they have a policy problem or a personality problem? And I realize their policies suck and they're horrific, and I got all that, but they just come off as so scolding and nagging and shrill. And when they're not that, they're weird. Everyone remembers that bizarre fight video last week. Is it a policy problem, or are they just kind of unlikable?
I think the weird person was J.D. Vance. We were reliably informed. And to Elle's point,
Yeah.
that's excellent, right?
Yeah.
Because they got rid of Joe Biden and swapped in Kamala Harris, who made clear on The View she wouldn't change a thing from what Joe Biden did. So not only was it not a policy issue, it also turned out to be a personality issue. And if you look at polling, it's not only that Democrats are wildly unpopular right now, Donald Trump is actually very popular. He's more popular now than at any point in his first term. So the rhetoric that Molly is spreading and these other folks, that's rhetoric that comes when you're stuck in a bubble and you refuse to step outside of that bubble. But that's not the rhetoric that's being shared on the ground among everyday Americans.
Elle, you did a piece, which I appreciated very much, talking about COVID and how COVID, it was really the draining of the last of the trust so many Americans had, myself included, between themselves and their institutions, namely their government. I don't trust anything anymore. When I see a report that says CDC or FBI or you name it, I just roll my eyes and say, oh, they're probably lying.
Yeah, so when Donald Trump first ran for president in 2016, a lot of people said, oh, Donald Trump is so divisive. I don't like how divisive he is. And then other people pointed out that it wasn't so much Trump being divisive as it was he was just willing to point out divisions that had been building for a long time. And I think COVID did a similar service. Our government was already corrupt, but COVID really showed us what our government was willing to do and what our government really thought of us. And I think that realization was really impactful for people. We saw declining trust in the corporate press after that. We saw a rightward swing among young people who were some of the most impacted by COVID lockdowns. And ultimately, we saw Democrats lose in the 2024 election, which was one of the first opportunities voters had to really deliver a verdict on what they thought of all the years of COVID mania.
Now, that young people thing actually fascinates me as well. Brianna, is that why young people are? I've never saw numbers like the numbers Trump got. Why are young people drifting right? You know, everyone knows that old Winston Churchill saying, if you're under 30 and not a liberal, you have no heart. If you're over 30 and not a conservative, you have no brain. It's just kind of built in that younger you are, the more likely you are to be a complete Maoist. But that's changing. Why?
Yeah, if you look at the polling, 18 to 29-year-old men in particular, who absolutely were a large part of Donald Trump's victory, they've shifted 29 points to the right since 2020. And one of the reasons is it is so jarring. If you read some of the interviews, USA Today did one a few months before the election. Young men were saying, look, I'm independent or I'm Democrat, but I'm going to be voting for Donald Trump because I can't afford to feed my family. When policies are created by Democrats that emasculate a man in particular who feels like he wants to provide for his family and can't do that, right? Or a party that constantly terrorizes and demonizes men, they have to go and find comfort somewhere else. And the Republican Party has offered an opportunity for, in particular, young men to feel welcome, to feel like they have a place and to feel recognized. And that definitely contributed to this massive shift we saw in young people voting for Donald Trump.
Speaking of emasculated men, Elle, Pete Buttigieg is very clearly going to be running for president in 2028. Gavin Newsom's going to be joining him with his gallon of hair gel. It's not that I'm jealous or anything like that. Who's the front runner for 2028 for these people?
Oh gosh, I don't know. And at this point, it doesn't really matter. I mean, like we were saying earlier, it's not about who the messenger is, it's about the message. And right now, Democrats are choosing the losing side of 80-20 issues. They're pro-war, they're pro-terrorist, they're pro-open borders, they're pro-injecting kids with hormones and cutting off their body parts, they're pro-government bloat. I mean, honestly, the numbers you were talking about a minute ago, I'm honestly surprised that Democrats' approval ratings aren't even lower in the tank.
Yeah. Ladies, thank you. Come back soon.
Thank you.
All
Thanks so
right.
much.
I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.